Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
From St. Louis Public Radio. This is St. Louis on the Air.
So they don't want your Christmas tree lights, they don't want your garden hose, they don't want your plastic snow fencing, your fenders, right? They don't want your big wheel that the kids just outgrew, right?
Yeah.
People throw all that stuff in there.
When you don't have somewhere where you can rinse the recycling, I know they say when in doubt, throw it out, but should go in the recycling or the trash.
Everyone thinks as long as I throw it in there, somebody else is going to deal with it. That is actually adding contamination. It's going through gears and mechanization. It's going through optical scanners.
There's a lot of concern right now that after that, they're not actually being reused. We've all heard about how China doesn't want our stuff anymore. I'm Sarah Fensky. Last May, the city of St. Louis stopped doing alleyway recycling pickups. The cause was a worker shortage. It was supposed to be temporary, but weeks turned into months, turned into a year. The city designated 25 drop-off spots where residents could bring their recyclables. Our producer Kayla Drake talked to one dedicated recycler this morning as she unloaded her car at a drop-off near I-64 in Forest Park. She gave her name only as Barb and explained that over the last year she's filled up her car once a week to drop off her recycling. The drop-off isn't far from her house, but it's still an inconvenience.
Once the city stopped picking up, I started dropping off. It is a pain. The recycling dumpsters, I was really glad when the city started them. I know a lot of people were complaining about the extra cost, but I was really happy because then I didn't have to drop off.
Now, Barb says recycling is very important to her.
I can't change a lot of things, me personally. You know, I can't stop the production of plastics. I can't change how companies operate just as an individual. What I can do is recycle.
Now, it's safe to say not everyone in St. Louis has been as motivated as Barb. And so it was big news when Mayor Tishaura Jones promised 2 weeks ago that alleyway pickups will come back this month. She wouldn't say exactly when. We tried to press her when she visited this show. But she did say the pickups will resume in May. And hey, a year without pickups is a long time. So if you've forgotten how to recycle or just need a refresher on what's allowed and what isn't, we're here to serve. Bob Henkel is a program director of Earth Day 365 and a recycling expert. And he joins us today. Bob, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Really great. I totally understand where Barb's coming from, that it can be inconvenient. I think that stems from kind of the idea that we want recycling to be the same as trash service, in which we just want to throw it away and let somebody else deal with it. And the recycling system isn't anywhere near the same as trash service. Trash service creates like one job per 10,000 pounds of trash. Recycling needs 10 or more jobs, right? So it's actually needing more people. It's a job creator. And the way that things get recycled is based on their individuality, not as like an easy group thing that can all get mixed together.
Yeah, I mean, walk us through this. So when I'm dumping my stuff in the big bin, and back when the city would come pick it up and will again be picking it up, what happens after that?
Well, one of the benefits of actually reducing the alley dumpster service and going to these collection site pickups is that contamination in our recycling went way down, right? It also kind of went way up as far as the type, we were doing really well keeping plastic bags out of the recycling bins, and then all of a sudden the pandemic brought us back to increasing that contamination because people were throwing plastic bags, they were throwing styrofoam back into their dumpsters.
Why would the pandemic be a factor in that? People just maybe had so much else going on, they weren't thinking about these contaminants.
One of the biggest issues was home delivery service. So now everyone's getting all this individual convenience foods, right? And Barb said it herself, it's inconvenient, right? And that whole idea of convenience in our lives. And I understand that. We've got so much going on. We're looking for efficient routines in our lives, right?
Yeah.
To get from point A to point B. So, but that also goes to a whole cultural imperative of high productivity. And so we've got all these different principles and ideas that are in the milieu of our culture that make it really hard to have a really robust, contaminant-free recycling system. Mm-hmm. So when you put stuff in the collection bins in the city, right, there's those 25 drop-offs. Those are picked up and they're taken to Republic Services facility. They have one in South County right off I-55, and they also have one up by the airport in Hazelwood.
I feel like I've seen these. You see just a massive amount of stuff there that you can see from the highway.
That facility is probably pushing 300 to 500 tons of material through its operation every day.
Wow.
So that in itself, the enormity of that number right there is something to just kind of take pause at and go, there's a lot of material coming. And then we have these home deliveries and we get even more cardboard, and more stuff going on. And then we also have in the consumer market more types of disposable products that everyone thinks as long as I throw it in there, somebody else is going to deal with it. So there's this lack of accountability and personal responsibility that happens. And the overwhelmedness of how do I figure out what can or can't be recycled. So that's why the city of St. Louis created stlcityrecycles.com. So at their website, that's stlouiscityrecycles.com, you can actually get all the information for about 80% of the region's recycling is going to go to Republic Services. So it's all going to be the same rules. It's going to be stick with the 6. You want, paper, cardboard, plastic bottles and containers, glass bottles and jars, metal food and beverage cans, plus those food and beverage cartons like your milk and your, things that come in an aseptic container, So that Stick with the 6 was a campaign that we at onestl.org, a sustainability arm of East-West Gateway Council of Governments, we created a waste and materials working group to look at reducing waste to landfill. And we came up with this campaign called Recycle Responsibly, Stick with the 6. You can find that at recycleresponsibly.org. And it gives you this kind of an impact of keep plastic bags out, keep styrofoam out.
Yeah.
And why do we want to keep plastic bags out? Because when the material ends up at the Republic Services facility, it's going through gears and mechanization. It's going through optical scanners. So, in fact, Channel 9 did a great show on this. And you can Google, material recovery facility to see how these operations go. And they're happy to, do these tours and put these videos out so you can really see how the whole design was around size and shape, right? Which your next guest is going to be talking about in a little different format too. Size and shape of, right?
Today. Yeah.
A little bit of design, right? So size and shape is really critical. And that is kind of critical about how we even put our materials into the bin. If we put a big cardboard box that's not broken down, then that's going to take up more space in the dumpster. It's going to take up more space in your cart. It's going to be harder for that to get through the system because it's trying to look for flat paper and move that differently from a three-dimensional bottle or container.
So that adds another step for somebody else if you're not taking care of it.
Exactly. So, I'd rather see everyone carry around a little case cutter, a little pocket knife, so that when they go to the dumpster, they can actually slice the tape, flatten the cardboard down, and then what happens a lot of times is people think it came in a cardboard box. And I'm not sure exactly if this is what they're thinking about,
If they're even thinking.
Right?
Sometimes one wonders.
There's something gelling here that people really want to do. And I find it fascinating, that, okay, I got this new TV, because now I'm watching so much Netflix that I got to have a bigger TV. So all this stuff coming in. Whatever came in the cardboard box ends up back into the cardboard box. So that includes the twist tie that was around the extension cord. That includes the plastic film wrap that's around the extension cord too, right? It includes the tape that was pushing the extension cord and pressing it onto the, securing it on the back of the TV. And also the styrofoam forms that are maintaining the packaging form around there so your TV comes in one piece, right? And so all that stuff goes back in, including the plastic strapping that goes around the box, right? And so you put all that stuff back in the box, and then you take that out to your dumps, and you're like, hey, I'm a good little recycler. I just put it all in there, right? And now you've just added a ton of contaminants, basically.
These are all these extra things. These are things that your recycler does not want.
Yeah, so when they say stick with the six, they really mean stick with the six. But people kind of get the idea that, oh, I can recycle plastic. Well, yes, but not all kinds of plastic. So they don't want your Christmas tree lights. They don't want your garden hose. They don't want your plastic snow fencing, your fenders, right? They don't want your big wheel that the kids just outgrew, right?
Yeah.
People throw all that stuff in there. And they were designed around the water bottle.
That's
basically,
what they want.
the plastic water bottle, right? And that also comes from just beverage companies really wanting to get recycling of their products go. So they really helped make sure that recycling became a really big piece everywhere. So when you're thinking about that plastic water bottle, if you start filling that with your chew spit, your cigarette butts, your napkins, you start stuffing all this stuff inside there. Now you give them this plastic bottle. That is actually adding contamination to the situation because the guy who wants to make more plastic from the plastic bottle doesn't want the napkin and the cigarette, although the cigarette butts are high in plastic because that's a big toxin, and that's a whole other thing
issue
about marine debris and plastic pollution.
Well, look, Bob, I got to cut in here because I can tell you know so much about recycling, and this is so important for all of us to do this right, not just to err on the side of chucking everything into these bins. So if you have a question for Bob, this is a recycling expert here. Our phone lines are now open, 314-382-8255. That's 382-TALK. You can also send us a tweet at STL on air. We'll take your questions. We're also hearing some interesting observations. Mary emailed us, please discourage the disposal of used diapers in any of the recycle bins. I find them regularly in green waste and in the blue recycle bins. Bob, I don't even need to check in with you on this. It's so clear to me. No, dirty diapers do not belong in the recycling bin.
So let's take a step back. I know we're asking for questions, but number one, let's just take a quick pause on all the stuff that we've been hearing already on this show. From the unsheltered, unhoused, to, Asian violence and stuff. I think we just really need to take a pause on this before we start going into these minutia questions and go, what are you really needing to know right now?
And what is the answer to that?
What I'm saying on that is I constantly get people at events. I've worked hundreds of events and festivals, and people come up to me and they're like, oh, I recycle everything. Oh, I do all this stuff. And then they want to know, oh, well, should I put the bottle cap back on the bottle? These are questions that might seem really important to you, but I really want to bring the impact around to what people have been listening to today and what we're dealing with in our society. Because if we don't deal with the grief that our culture kind of imparts around us, these ideas around recycling as I am sustainable, I'm doing the best for the environment because I'm recycling, don't get at the crux of what about the overconsumption in the first place? If you have a water bottle, you just kind of made several mistakes, as I like to say, before you even got the water bottle. Right? There's reusable options. There's, you could fill up at a tap or a water fountain. I carry a water bottle with me all the time. And so I could also go a little bit longer without water. And yet, do I want to get a water bottle that's traveled 1,500 miles away from another community and taken their resources, and that energy and transportation and the embodied energy of emissions through all that, right? And recycling is one of the top 100 ways of reducing climate change and drawing down carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. Project Drawdown is an amazing resource that talks about many solutions to climate change. Dealing with food waste reduction is one of them, refrigeration and recycling somewhere around number 50. Mm-hmm. So people think of recycling as this is my gateway in and that's all I need to do. But I really want to draw it back to what's our impact globally and locally on the choices that we make in the supermarket and other places that we get all this material, we get this convenience packaging coming in, and then we think we can just manage it through our recycling system.
I mean, you make an excellent point there. I do think it does go back to what we heard Barb say. This is one thing that many of us can do. Now, we also can pay attention to our own consumption, for sure. And I think that's an excellent point here. Let's go to the... Actually, no, let's not go to the phone lines. We have a bunch of callers. We're just making sure that somebody is ready before we can get to them. You know, the big question that we got on Twitter this morning is people are asking, where are they going after pickup? And I know that you said they go to Republic Services and that they're being sorted there. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of concern right now that after that, they're not actually being reused. We've all heard about how China doesn't want our stuff anymore. And this is a big point of what happens within this chain. Are these things then being repurposed?
The important thing around understanding the recycling system is that we're in the Midwest. Many national stories have come out talking about how things are left on barges and other stuff, and that's really happened a lot on the coastlines who didn't have a lot of land capacity, and they didn't have all the Midwest markets that our local Republic Services had. He was sending pretty much probably 80 to 90% of the stuff was staying domestic, between Oklahoma, Kentucky, Michigan, Minnesota, here in the Midwest. So, and now Republic Services has made a commitment to not send basically anything internationally. So they're really trying to
they
change
have
their
found homes
supply
for
chains,
these things.
Right?
Okay.
We've gotten more paper pulpers online, which is a good thing. And so it really is, and the materials have been moving. And when we say moving, it means like we're getting them from our house to the facility, sorted into bales of like substances, and that being able to be sold to a like paper pulper, an aluminum remanufacturer, a guy who wants plastic number 1 water bottles to make more plastic, like fleece jackets or stuff like that. So
that's a great assurance there. We know that stuff coming out of St. Louis, at least there is a home for that. Let's go to the phone lines. Chelsea is calling from Belleville. Chelsea, hi. You're on St. Louis on the air.
Hi, thank you. I was curious about dirty products recycling, like especially when you're out and about at a park or a zoo. When you don't have somewhere where you can rinse the recycling, I know they say when in doubt, throw it out, but should it go in the recycling or the trash?
Chelsea, great question there. Bob?
And when you say when in doubt, throw it out, I'm wondering, are you feeling like really guilty if you actually throw something away?
Yes.
Yeah, I totally get that, right? I mean, we had Smokey the Bear, put out the fires and like put stuff in trash cans. We've had a lot of marketing around that. And there's this idea that our landfills are like the worst place ever to put something, right? And actually in Missouri, we closed a lot of landfills that were just open pits. And so now a landfill is much better designed. It's lined and is designed to take solid materials. And so I totally understand that grief around wanting to just like not throw it out, and I want to be able to be responsible for it. The idea that and the principles to follow is everything should be empty, clean, and dry. That's what Republic Services want. If we had everything empty, clean, and dry, their facilities would not have any kind of vectors in them at all, and we're trying to keep food waste and stuff out.
So if Chelsea's out and about and there's stuff on her plates or in her cups, she should throw it out.
Well, I would get rid of the liquid that's in the cup and then recycle the cup. So people that put let's just talk about how a plastic water bottle will go through the facility, right? It gets into the truck, it's dumped onto a big tipping floor, big concrete open pit, a front end loader, lifts it all up, puts it into a hopping machine and onto conveyor belts. And now it's going to travel through the whole facility until it gets to an optical scanner that's going to shoot a light down there and read what kind of plastic this is. Is it a number 1 plastic like your water bottle? Is it a number 2 like your laundry detergent bottle? If it's a number 1, this is what this particular line wants to look for. And as that water bottle goes under the optical scanner, it'll trigger a breath of air that will blow and pop that water bottle up off the conveyor belt and into a bunker of like number 1 objects. If there's water in there, like quarter of the thing, a certain amount of weight, that breath of air is not going to be able to be strong enough to knock it off the conveyor belt, and it's going to drop into a bunker that's going to have more mixed plastics in it. So we just kind of lost an opportunity there, right? Not only that, but let's say that you didn't have the cap on really tight, and you start pouring water out of that bottle and the thousands of others that are in that bin on top of paper. And now we have paper mixed up with all this other stuff, and it's getting wet, and then that's degrading its value as a commodity for reuse. Paper has a certain length of fiber. Colored magazines have some of the best, longest fibers in paper, and tissue paper and toilet paper have some of the shortest. And so Kleenex and toilet paper and things like that, we don't want to put into our or paper towels for that matter, into our recycling bin because the fibers are already been reused. They're too short to really get good recycling out of that material. And so thinking of the whole system might be a way to approach, how do I deal with this particular issue in my hand? Mm-hmm. And the hardest thing with recycling education is I feel like I have to have these conversations with every individual.
Sure.
Because everyone has a different kind of product in their hand, and everyone wants to know, can I do this? Can I do that? We try to create these kind of blanket statements, but I would really recommend going to stlcityrecycles.com and learning through those activities on their site and their blogs about what can and can't go in the bin.
Well, Bob Henkel, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. That's a great reminder, stlcityrecycles.com. Get up to speed. Get ready for that alleyway pickup. There's a bunch of great suggestions on there. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And Bob is the program director of Earth Day 365. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. This episode was produced by Kayla Drake with audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr. Our executive producer is Alex Hoyer. St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri, St. Louis.
Support comes from Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to sustainable and sound conservation of the state's forests, which support more than 41,000 Missouri jobs, resulting in a $10 billion industry. ChooseWood.com.